Okay, let me thank my good friend Afroz for this invite, and thought I will reflect on the contemporary populism of the right wing. Why is there a growth of right wing politics across the globe, not just in India, from Trump to Brexit? This is a global phenomenon we're witnessing, and what does this mean? So there are, I think, very important socio-political changes that are coming in order to understand. This is not simply a rise of right wing, simply a rise of hatred. Yes, there is an anti-minority, and therefore from a minority vantage point, it's important for all of you to understand perhaps that there are some deeper political changes that are making this kind of an anti-minority Islamophobia a politically viable project. What are those changes? So as Professor Asadi rightly pointed out, I'll just throw up few issues and then we can open it up for debate. One is the idea that why is it that the right-wing mobilization is becoming feasible because of internal changes within Hindu community. So we'll have to understand this change that is coming about in Hindu community. What is that the RSS and BJP are trying to do? Why does it become an attractive project for a majority of Hindus? There is an appeal there. So my first suggestion would be that one should not involve simply in a moral rejection of right wing. In spite of our dislike for their politics, in spite of our deep disagreement with the politics, one has to socially understand before we critique them as to why right-wing project is a feasible project. And there are very complex changes that are coming. I'm writing a full-length paper on this, but I'll just throw up few elementary basic issues for you to consider. What are these changes which as minorities you need to make sense of, and what kind of intervention is possible for us who are on the secular left progressive side to sort of understand this. So therefore I said first is not to have a moral rejection of right, but understand right as a kind of a quote unquote legitimate social force in this country. That they are appealing to certain fundamental changes that are coming about, especially post what I call with the emergence of post-Congress system, post-1990s in the post-neoliberal era. The old kind of Nehruvian secularism is in some kind of a very deep crisis. Okay. Why is it so? As I said, very complex reasons. So I'll just pick two or three issues. One major, and it emerges partly because of the failure of old kind of Nehruvian secularism to raise very key issues. That discourse of the left, Nehruvian kind, failed to address some very fundamental issues that emerge in course of social transformation. Hindu community has been undergoing transformation because of Dalit assertion, because of post-OBC reservation, OBCs coming to the forefront and mainstreaming of the OBCs. This has created some kind of a transformative anxiety within the Hindu community, the dominant social elites within the Hindus. Elites like the Reddis, Kammas, Jats, Pattidars, Marathas, you see the entire gamut of dominant landed elites are today in a crisis. They are all on the streets. And this is part of the social transformation, and I refer to it as the herd pride. We really do not have in social sciences a method of theorizing what do you do with the anxiety, psyche that is produced when transformation occurs, including Brahmins. When you are socially challenged from bottom up, when Dalits are taking over, when OBCs are coming to forefront, when women are challenging your institutional presence, the old elite cannot enjoy the same kind of dominance. The old elite suffers from herd pride. They suffer from a feeling of terminal decline. Most of left has simply rejected this as a backwardness, as feudal, but has not theorized how do you address this anxiety. And that is where the right, one of the entry points of the right-wing politics of the RSS kind has, is that they politicize and they criminalize that anxiety. That is the entry point for generating an anti-Muslim popular sentiment in this country. So if you think from the RSS point of view, they are trying to mobilize these sections who are suffering from this third pride. That's the reason you have Patidars on the streets, you have Jats on the streets, you have Marathas on the street. The problem with the left, secular, progressive discourse is that you really do not have categories of what do you do with this declining caste. How do you address the anxieties produced from this transformative process? This was partly the crisis of the left, even in the old Russian experiment, that you do not have an agenda. For instance, Kashmiri Pandits. What is the agenda that the left progressives have for Kashmiri Pandits who feel displaced? Today Brahmins feel shortchanged. You have poor among Brahmins too. What is your agenda for those who are poor among Brahmins? What is your agenda for those who are poor among Jats, among Patidars? So we have left, the left progressives have left a large chunk of social domain completely untheorized. And you have no agenda for these groups. And it is this unaddressed agenda which becomes the first starting point for the RSS. And therefore this appeal that Hindu community is under threat, when they mean Hindu community is under threat, it comes from this social mobilization of the bottom groups in Hindu community, where all groups, the declining castes feel threatened by the bottom up. The bottom of caste, including Dalits and OBCs, become insecure because they are not very sure that the privileges that they have earned with a lot of struggle are here to stay. And neoliberalism has added to this anxiety. Neoliberalism has added to this anxiety. Therefore, Hindu community today is suffering from a tremendous sense of anxiety which has anyway happened, what Zygmunt Bauman calls pervasive sense of insecurity has overtaken. And this is where making Muslim the other, in order to consolidate Hindu community. Therefore, the discourse that RSS, BJP have introduced is that you will have to divide Muslim community internally. So this triple talaq is not simply a reform or a concern that Modi ji has suddenly realized for Muslim women, which is what they are articulating. But the sense they want to give the Hindu majority is that we have to consolidate and we have to weaken Muslims by internally dividing them. When they are doing this internal division within Muslims, they are using progressive issues to internally divide. So talking about Pasmanda reservations, they are talking about triple talaq, which is in one sense a fairly progressive issue. So the second crisis, second degree of crisis for the left progressive seculars is that you again do not have a language to critique the intervention that BJP RSS is making into the Muslim community. Most of us, for instance, do not have a language. We cannot oppose triple talaq. At the most, you might say that you are carrying it out by not discussing with internal Muslim community. But that's a very mild critique. But in essence, not many of us would be willing to not support the kind of legal changes that they have brought, apart from criminalization 3 years, apart from that excessive thing. But we will all stand for liberation of Muslim women. So you really do not have much to say in terms of critiquing, though you know the intention of BJP RSS is not really liberation of Muslim women, but to internally break and divide and make Muslim community heterogeneous. We always knew Muslims were heterogeneous, but now they are playing that heterogeneity. Similarly, Pasmanda reservation. The Muslim elite for long have subsided these issues. Therefore, all those questions of social elites within Muslims today, therefore they are questioning that and bringing change. And part of our progressive politics has been that change now looks like humiliation. That bringing change in terms of bringing triple talaq and Pasmanda Muslim question for the secular discourse begins to look as an inconvenient truth. And therefore, as progressive lefts, we have a second order difficulty, that you really do not know how to critique these changes, how to place it in the larger narrative of RSS BJP, which is not liberation of Muslims, which is not democratization of Muslim community, but to make it weaker, at least a sense of being weaker, being internally divided, and giving therefore a sense to the Hindu majority that you become stronger by consolidating. So they wish to make Hindu majority more homogeneous and Muslim community more heterogeneous. Here the left progressives, we have no discourse to intervene on either side. And that's the reason the gradual decline of the left is that. So that's my first point, the larger argument, but I'll leave it there. My second point is in terms of the change in the language of state itself. That there's again a big change that is happening between the public and private kind of discourse. That today state is becoming a private entity and private is becoming a public entity. Therefore, corporates are talking about public issues like health, environment, education, malnutrition, ecology, so on and so forth. So it's behaving like a public, so they are talking of public goods. State is becoming a private entity. That is, state begins to act like a private. And how does this do? This is an important change that populism has brought out globally. It is bringing this change in very many different ways. When I say state becomes like a private entity, is that symbolism of state today is no longer to act like a public objective structure, but it is to act like your friend next door. Therefore, you have a prime minister who weeps in the parliament, a prime minister who uses conversational language. It's very easy to understand what in public you are rational, civil, polite. In private you express all your private prejudices against Muslims. Those prejudices remained all through. State never did anything to rework those prejudices. Prejudices on both sides, on the Muslim private side and the Hindu private side. So if you talk to even an average Muslim, he has prejudice against Hindus. What populism has done is that it has legitimized bringing this private into the public. So therefore, populism is an inclusive regime. It is in this sense democratizing. Why it becomes so acceptable is that it democratizes your existence by allowing you to express your private emotions in the public. You don't have to feel guilty about expressing your private prejudices in the public domain. Therefore, this lynching business that is happening all over India is a symbolism of that. It is a way of institutionalizing this. It is building a consensus, an acceptance that if you have deep-seated private prejudice against Muslims, you can bring it out and express it even in terms of violence. And state will condone it. Why does state condone it? State condones it because state is recognizing that the private prejudices existed. What secular state did was a schizophrenic exercise. Allow your private prejudices to exist, but in public you act civil and secular and egalitarian. So it was a very thin layer of secularism. It's a very thin layer of secularism. So the big question for us today is that how do you positively politicize emotions? Should state take up politicizing emotions as a positive political project? This is going to be, I think, to my mind, a next big question to all of us. That state, we cannot return back to that. If you want to defeat this kind of a populist, right-wing, majoritarian intolerance that we are witnessing in this country, there will be a lot of questions even to the Muslim community. This cannot break only one way. So my question would be that if state is to play a more positive role in terms of politicizing public emotions, one question could be that we should now think about a state politicizing not merely secularism as tolerance, but secularism as a positive solidarity between communities. For instance, you can have state policy, and we need to all push for this, where you must say that neighborhood, state-based neighborhood, like DDA colonies in Delhi, we can always say that all neighborhoods should be mixed neighborhoods in terms of percentage. Muslims and Hindus and Christians, they should always, state should positively propagate a mixed neighborhood. Schooling, you have new economic education policy where you have 25% reservations for poor. We should necessarily demand mixed schooling between Hindus, Muslims and Christians. Today what is happening is a process of social ghettoization. In this, you will face more graver questions. Now, this with all love jihad business happening, with prejudice on both sides of the community. Questions like interreligious marriage will come up in a big way. Ambedkar said intercaste marriage, to do away with caste. What about interreligious marriages to do away with religious prejudices? Forget Hindus, how many Muslims will accept this proposal? I'm not very sure, because many continue to believe that core of Islam would not agree for interreligious marriage. So these are the questions that are going to come up in the next decade of Indian politics, that what policy frame are we going to use? We cannot go back. Therefore, minorities cannot use what I call cannot be selectively secular. That where it is useful, we cannot say we want secularism. When it comes to your own internal issues, whether it's talaq, whether it is marriage, whether it is property, you then cannot say that we want to preserve our pure Muslim identity. These two things cannot go together. This is what neoliberal secularism attempted, and we have met a dead end. Well, of course, we had a partition memory, minority, insecurity, all that. But today, Muslim community too also has to gear up for a new kind of secularism if we want to defeat this populism. And my own understanding is that there is no preparedness from either side of the communities. And that is the empty space in which the new kind of populism is growing. That if you want to bring in private emotions into public, then the internal prejudices within the minority community also will be politicized. How are we going to deal with that? And the part of problem is that the Nehruvian kind of old secularism does not really give us a language to deal with prejudices even within minorities. This hatred for Hindus, not being prepared for marriage, you can see the resistance, love jihad. Therefore, BJP and RSS in that sense are crafty enough to raise all sensitive and right issues which at the core divide the Hindu and Muslim communities. They are taking it to the last bedrock. Secularism was a cover tha, a parda tha. We all lived in that parda for too long. Our parental generation lived. Now we don't have parda. We are now naked. Our prejudices are in the street. The Hindu prejudices are in the street. The Muslim prejudices are in the street. And Modi and Modi's personality, it's a symbolic reading one has to make. Success of Narendra Modi's appeal is that post Gujarat 2002 is that he has legitimized this prejudice in the public domain. He said, agar aapko prejudice hai, marna hai, jaake mariye, state will look the other way. State has no role. State is like a non-entity. State is like a private player here. So state is a Hindu state. So Muslim community has to now gear up to ask that in this business of politicizing emotions, and if you have to bring emotions into the public domain, into policy making, we have to make a very genuine assessment that what is the preparedness of the Muslim community. How far are minorities prepared? My recent experience in Kerala, where I made a similar point, and I do not want to mention, but Beg Saab would know him, a colleague, a Muslim colleague, said, Saab, aap to, you spoke wonderfully, excellent talk tha, लेकिन ये इंटर रिलीजियस मैरिज है, बहुत ही खतरनाक बात कर रहे हैं आप. ये हमारे लिए मंजूर नहीं है, because core of Islam will never agree. No, this business of what is core, who decides what is core? This idea, so one has to also, therefore minorities have to frame the minority question very differently. Muslims cannot frame the question of minority politics through the majoritarian gaze. Today Muslims are framing who is a Muslim in terms of the agenda set by the RSS Hindu majority community. Therefore, RSS tells you triple talaq is the core of Muslim identity, Muslim community walks into that trap. RSS tells you that interreligion is, you walk into that trap. Muslims have to decide for themselves what is their identity, and I don't think there is any core. No religious text can have one interpretation, otherwise you wouldn't have so many hadiths, so many interpretations, so many sects. So Muslim community has to understand that heterogeneity is a lived reality for all religious community. And this heterogeneity is going to become more complex. You will have to coexist with other religions, with other interpretations, also with inconvenient atheists like us, who don't believe in any God. You will have to learn to live with all of them, and this has to be your secular problem. Secularism today has to mean to push to that extent, that Muslim community. How do you do this both? The problem is precisely this. Just when you are at the peak of your insecurity, how do you internally democratize your community? I think is one major challenge the right-wing politics is posing to us today. That how do we carry out this double task? This is what Karl Polanyi would say, double movement. the double task of internally democratizing yourself when you are so much under insecurity, without essentializing your identity. This is a question that Muslims are facing across India. When I speak to my friends from Kashmir, I say this: you are under the attack, but this is a moment you'll have to introduce a social narrative of Kashmir. What is happening internally? If you do not have, and the old kind of secularism does not allow us to do this, and that's precisely the reason why it is internally failing. So my last point would be that this idea of new cultural subalterns, second complex, I'll quickly explain in a couple of minutes, that what is today happening is that the new social divide, and this is again I feel is important for the minority politics in India, that the new divide is not just Hindu and Muslim and elites, is not about on class grounds and economic inequality. The new social divide that is emerging globally is between a small liberal left rationalist elites and an alternative communitarian subaltern culture. You should read David Goodhart's new book, A Road to Somewhere. He says the world is today divided between anywheres and somewheres. Anywheres are uprooted souls like us. Cosmopolitan, can live in any part of the country, can travel to any part of the country, can have partners from any religion, any society, any community. Somewheres are the majority, where territorially grounded, communitally grounded, and David Goodhart points out that even 60% of England has not moved out of the 20-kilometer provincial radius which they have lived all through, from generations. So the new divide is between this kind of a liberal, progressive, secular elites, who are the ones who are supporting gender rights, who support LGBT, who support interreligious marriage. But the majority is what you call the somewheres, who are territorially grounded, culturally rooted. Many of the Muslims would come under that category. Now what do you do with this divide? What is the language? I think part of the crisis for secular languages, secularism believed in this kind of cosmopolitanism. We thought it was a natural order for modernization, but today we realize no. Globalization has introduced changes too fast, and majority of communities are not able to cope with this quick intermixing and what urbanization has brought in. So there is a genuine crisis. I wouldn't even hesitate to say that a certain conservative Muslim section would have more in common with the conservative right-wing Hindu community than with these liberal elites. Muslims only have a selective liking for leftists. जब तक काम आए हमारा दोस्त है, काम के बाद तो वो भी दुश्मन बन जाते हैं. Now how is majority Muslim that minority politics is going to face in this country? That how do we breach this divide between a small elites under whose guidance, under whose leadership there has been a secular India possible, a constitutional India possible, but a majority communitarian view which is deeply antithetical to this constitutional morality. And this is across communities. This is across communities. So this new subalternization, the new cultural subalterns that are emerging across India, from all sides they hate this liberal. It's only selective. Who hates is only a relative business. So this idea of constitutional morality, this business of freedom of expression, this business of rule of law, this business of legality is a very thin, we need to realize that it's a very thin, there's a very thin consensus to this in this country. Therefore this new liberal secularism has to overstretch to include and produce a new language. This is what I spoke day before in JNU. To my friends who were protesting on campus, I said that majority dislike this whole hate business. Why did the right succeed in generating a campaign against JNU? Because what JNU stands for, one has to accept is not acceptable to majority. Freedom of expression, free liberal language, you can talk about Kashmir, you can support Burhan Wani, you can literally talk anything in JNU. If you come to my classroom, it is blasphemous things we speak, I speak to my children. And this is acceptable to very small, this life of mind, this free expression, majority community language does not accept this. It finds it threatening. disputes. It's a real problem. It's a real problem because it breaches historical memory, it breaches that communitarian link. So it is across board, across Hindus and Muslims. So this new language, what progressive lefts can create, can we create a new language to reach out, to provide a security, yet make them internally democratized? I think is a new challenge for secularism. So I'll stop here. Thank you.